Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, may we have your attention please? The Studium Generale is about to begin. Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is our great pleasure to welcome you to the West Hall of Institut Teknologi Bandung on this Wednesday, May 7, 2025, for this special Studium Generale session featuring Mr. Matthias Altendorf, President of the Supervisory Board Endress and Hauser Group. Today, Mr. Matthias will be sharing valuable insight on the topic Bionic Leadership for Family Business Longevity. Ladies and gentlemen, to begin today's event, we kindly invite you to rise for the national anthem of Indonesia, Indonesia Raya.
Indonesia, tanah airku, tanah tumpah darahku. Di sanalah aku berdiri, jadi pandu ibuku. Indonesia, kebangsaanku, bangsa dan tanah airku. Marilah kita bersatu, Indonesia bersatu. Hiduplah tanahku, hiduplah negeriku, bangsaku, rakyatku semuanya. Bangunlah jiwanya, bangunlah badannya, untuk Indonesia Raya.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, to officially open today's event, we would like to invite the Vice Rector for Communication, Partnerships, Alumni Relation, and Administration of Institut Teknologi Bandung to deliver the opening remarks. Please welcome Dr. Andrianto Rikri Kusmara.
Good morning everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Distinguished guests, deans, head of study programs, esteemed faculty members, members of academic community, and my beloved students. Let me begin by expressing our sincere gratitude to the presence of Mr. Matthias Altendorf, President of the Supervisory Board of Endress and Hauser Group, and also Professor Insinyur Endra, who will be served as today's moderator. I would also like to warmly welcome to all students who joining us today for the Studium Generale, whether you are attending in person here in West Hall of ITB Ganesha Campus, or participating virtually from our campus in Jatinangor and campus Cirebon in West Java. All praise is due to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala for His grace and blessings, which have enabled us together today in this inspiring forum, one we eagerly look forward to as a space for learning, broadening perspective, and igniting new ideas. We are all aware that family businesses form the backbone of the economy in many countries, including Indonesia. However, ensuring their aligned with sustainability present a complex challenge. This is where the need for adaptive, visionary, and human-centered leadership become crucial, what we refer to as bionic leadership. As I read, bionic leadership is more than just the fusion of human emotional intelligence and technological precision. It is a leadership philosophy that harmonizes tradition with innovation, conscience with data, and family values with business efficiency. It is an evolutionary and interdisciplinary approach to the modern family businesses management, blending leadership, philosophy, and science to offer fresh perspective on sustainability and long-term success. Today, we will explore how this model of leadership can be applied strategically not only to preserve the financial health of family business, but also to safeguard their values, spirit, and legacy across generations. It is my hope that today the Studium Generale will serve as a spark, especially for the younger generation, encouraging us all to become resilient, adaptable leaders, deeply rooted in strong values. Without further ado, let us warmly welcome our distinguished speaker, Mr. Matthias Altendorf, to present today's topic, Bionic Leadership for Family Business Longevity. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we now proceed to the main agenda of today's program, the Studium Generale, which will be moderated by Professor Endra Yulianto, PhD. Professor Endra is a lecturer at the Faculty of Industrial Technology, specializing in instrumentation, control, and automation research group. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Endra Yulianto.
Good morning, distinguished lecturer, Mr. Matthias Altendorf, distinguished guests and students. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Before we start the Studium General lecture, I will introduce the curriculum vitae of the guest speaker. Mr. Matthias Altendorf now since 2024 is the president of the Supervisory Board Endress and Hauser Group. Since 2023, member of the Supervisory Board, Amiropa AG Switzerland, member of the Supervisory Board, Kaltin AG Switzerland, and since 2018, member of the Supervisory Board, Kisra AG Switzerland. From 2014 until 2023, CEO of the Endress Hauser Group Switzerland. From 2009 until 2023, member of the Executive Board Endress Hauser Group. 2006 until 2013, Managing Director Endress Hauser GmbH COCG Marburg, Germany. 2000 until 2005, member of the Management Board Endress Hauser Flotex Reinhardt, Switzerland, and also Director Marketing, Research and Development. 1997 till 2000, Head of Sales and Services, Endress Hauser Flotex AG, Reinhardt, Switzerland. 1994 until 1997, Department Manager, Area Sales Management, Endress Hauser Flotex AG, Reinhardt, Switzerland. 1993 until 1994, Consultant, Honeywell, Phoenix, Arizona, USA. 1991 until 1993, Project Manager for Engineering R&D Projects, Endress Hauser Flotex AG, Reinhardt, Switzerland. That's his career structure. And for the education, 1986 until 1988, apprenticeship program for mechanics, Endress Hauser, GmbH, and COKG, Marburg, Germany. 1989 until 1991, physics degree, Science College, Usni, Germany. 1995 until 1996, General Management Program, University of Basel, Switzerland. And 1997, Europreneur, Executive Management Program, University St. Gallen, Switzerland, and INSEAD, France. And 2003, Managing Corporate Resources, Executive Management Program at IMD Lausanne, Switzerland. 2009, Senior Executive Program, London Business School, England. 2013, Senior Executive Program, Stanford University, USA. 2019, Advanced Management Program, MIT, USA. And 2022, Corporate Directors Program, Harvard Business School. For the association, he is the member of the board, WVIB, member of the Select Committee, ZVEI, and also lecturer, Sloan's Business School, MIT. And hobbies, sailing, for resting, chess, reading, and motorcycling. That's his curriculum vitae. And now I would like to invite Mr. Matthias Altendorf as the guest lecturer of the Studium General ITB. Please welcome Mr. Matthias Altendorf.
So a warm welcome from my side. Thank you very much for your introduction. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, coming all the way from Switzerland to Indonesia. It's very nice to be here. You have much warmer weather than we have. When I left Switzerland, it was about 5 degrees C, so it was much colder than it is here. What I would like to bring to you is not something which has to do with technology, because as you have seen from my curriculum, I'm a physicist by education, but I would like to share with you something completely outside of the technology area, because I'm in a family business. I run one of the largest Swiss family-based technology companies, and I would like to share with you what I have learned, why a family business can strive and be successful over generations. That's the idea behind. So I share with you a little bit about Endress and Hauser, the thoughts and definitions, and then I go for the evolutionary approach, what's behind there, and I also will share with you a little bit about later on, if you have questions and answers, I try to share with you my wisdom I have. I would like to start with a general question or a general statement. I found this in Paris in a shop where tourists can buy postcards. It says, on singe Willy. It's a French. Who speaks French? Nobody? I speak a little bit of French, so I help you. I translate it. The monkey who reads. And the monkey who reads are we, the human beings. And to biologically precise, we are not monkeys, we are primates. And we have a very important primate in Indonesia. How is it called? The orangutan, the human from the forest, huh? It's called. Very important. So in this one sentence you see something which makes us very unique. We can store knowledge, we can establish culture, and we can give culture and knowledge from one generation to the next and enrich it and store it again. That makes the human beings very unique. And that's the same in companies. If companies can store their knowledge and their culture and give it from one generation to the next one, and has an environment which enriches it, then they can strive from that point of view. So, family business, this is the family, this is the Endress family, not all of them. When everybody's together, it's 84 people, but they own this company more or less, and it's a family business which are the owners of the company. A family business is unique because none of the stock, none of the ownership is traded at the stock market. So still we have to oblige to the financial rules of the Swiss government, but we do not necessarily have to disclose and follow the stock market rules one-to-one. Very unique. The major difference is a family business doesn't think from quarter to quarter or from year to year. A family business thinks from one generation to the next generation to the next generation. So when they hired me, they did not ask me increase the sales, increase the profit. The only one requirement they had is, Mr. Altendorf, bring us from the second generation to the third to the fourth generation. This was the only requirement I had for my job. A family business also has values, and because they stand for something, they have a value system. And the value system of Endress & Hauser is a very simple one: commitment. Commitment for our employees, commitment for our customers, and commitments for our societies we operate in. Then we have excellence. We are a Swiss company. Swiss people are known for their precision, for their reliability, for their quality. And in what we do, we try to be as good as we can, and we strive for this. When we make a measurement, we want to be the best one who makes the best measurement. When we want to deal with our employees, we want to deal in an excellent fashion with our employees. So it goes through the whole culture. Then sustainability. Sustainability from an environmental point of view, but also from a social point of view and from a governance point of view. Social, the most social thing a company can do is provide jobs, pay salaries, and pay tax. Because the government needs tax for education. So therefore we do not hide, or we do not move our business to avoid tax. For us, to pay tax in a country is something, a duty for us we like to do, because when we are successful we can share. And the last one, governance. Our company should not depend on individuals itself, because we have the responsibilities for 18,500 employees. Their families make 60,000. With our sub-suppliers, more than 100,000 people depend on the well-being of our company and not. So therefore, we strive to be very good in the sustainability side. And last but not least, friendliness. Friendliness also means we try to remain very humble. Just because we are from Switzerland, just because we might have money, does not allow us to be not humble to other people and not kind to other people. So we try in our company culture, we try to be kind to our customers, our suppliers, our partners, our employees. So the company has been established in 1953. You can see here the financial data. You can also see it quite a success story over the years. It took us 40 years to make the first billion. It took us another 20 years to make the second billion, and it took us another 10 years to make another 2 billion. So we made, in the last 10 years, we made more money and more revenue than we did in the 60 years before. But That's the part we had the foundations. And that's the one thing we always know, that we stand on the shoulders of our forefathers. You know, and that's our humble being. I'm not the manager who created this. It's the 18,500 people who created this, and it has been the people who started the business. So we're standing always on the shoulders of the success of our forefathers. Let me come a little bit to the environment. And this picture I imagined during the COVID time, when nobody can go to the office. And at the end of the day, you see on one hand side a cave, which is in my forest, in my neighborhood, in the Black Forest. And I said, at the end of the day, it has been thrown us back hundreds or thousands of years. When we look into the Zoom screen or Teams screen or whatever you would like, it's like sitting in the cave, no interaction with other people. We are just having our own view of the world and not the real view of the world. So I draw this picture basically of the cave and the Zoom part being back, not understanding that we are not alone and that we have social interaction with other people. And that's brought me back to where people like to gather. And in ancient times, people gathered around the fire. Why did they gather around the fire? Communication, social interaction, food, warmth, belonging, chit-chatting, everything which makes us different from a human being. And it's not happening so much in the digital world. It only happens if people getting together, if they can feel they are part of a human, of a social system, we call that. And then I got to know a little bit about I got to know Dr. Hess. He's the curator of the Basel Zoo, where the primates are. So the primates are the orangutan, the chimpanzee, the bonobo, the mountain gorilla, and the human beings. 5 primates define the family of the primates. And he was in Africa. He was in the jungle of Africa researching the mountain gorillas. Some of you might heard the name Dian Fossey, very famous movie, Gorillas in the Mist. And he was a researcher together with Dian Fossey about the mountain gorillas. And he said to me, when I met him, he said, you know, when you watch the species in the habitat or the environment they are operating in, then the interesting stories start to be created. And that triggered me a lot. So we went into a dialogue because I said, I'm a human being. In which environment? And the human being, very interesting, can live in the desert, can live in the jungle, can live in the ice. We are the only species on the planet who can live everywhere. It's a very interesting thought, you know, because a mountain gorilla can only live in the mountains, or an orangutan can only live in the Sumatra or the Kalimantan jungle at the end of the day. A crocodile can only live in the salty water of Australia, for example. But we human beings can live everywhere. Very interesting. So then he gave me a few things to consider. He said, Mr. Altendorf, you're a physicist. Why does a crocodile look like a crocodile? That was his question to me. And I said, I have to think about, why does a crocodile look like it? I said, look, where does the crocodile live? And then I realized, okay, the crocodile in the majority lives into the water. So the length of the body looks like a piece of pipe, a crocodile. And when you see the crocodile looks like this, it's very clear it can swim much better. It has a function like a fish, but it has 4 legs because it has to breed on land. But it breeds with eggs, not like a mammal. So the environment where the crocodile lives in optimizes the crocodile's behavior, the crocodile's things. The second question he asked me, why does a zebra look like a zebra? Very strange look. It doesn't look like a horse. It's actually, I think, more a donkey than it is a horse. Why does the zebra have the stripes? And the zebra has the stripes because the stripes is a better protection for the mosquitoes. I didn't know that, but the way how it is when it lives out in the savannah, in the African savannah, the stripes help them to be better protected against the mosquitoes which stitch them at the end of the day. And each zebra can recognize itself based on the stripes a zebra has. So that triggered me, okay, what are the environments? So when we look at the company, I always look, what is the environment of the company? Where is it located? What is the competition? Who's the suppliers? What is the governance system around it? And that is what triggered me. When you look at the company, just don't look not at the product, look at the total environment, what it's all about. He researched the mountain gorillas. And now I have 3 questions for you. You see here, this gentleman here is very peaceful over there. This mountain gorilla has 14 times the force of an adult human being. 14 times the force. It has the carnivore teeth, this is this one here, but it's a vegetarian. And the strongest, the most powerful person in a pod of gorillas is not the male, it's the female. At the end of the session, I will ask you, think about the 3 questions. Why does the male have 14 times the power of a human being? Why does it have carnivore teeth even though it's a vegetarian? And the 3rd question would be, why is the most powerful in the gorillas is the lady and not the man? And I ask you this question, think about it. You might even Google it, but you won't find it. So here's the habitat. The habitat is a jungle, and the jungle without any streets. And so they move around in a 50 square kilometer per family, 50 square kilometers, where they move around 365 days a year in order to get all the food and the diet they need. So this is where they live in with their families and where they are active. So where does the word bionic come from? Very simple. Bionic is a combination of the word biology and the word technique or technology, in the German language technique, technology. And this has come up in the 90s and the 20th century because we apply phenomena from nature, from biology, into technologies. For example, you have paintings with the lotus painting, or you have the shape of a car looks more like a fish, or on an airplane you might have seen the winglets. That's how birds fly, much more energy efficient. So this is why we use this word biology. Evolutionary leadership is applying evolutionary principles in the man-made world. Just to give you a little bit of a perspective, the human beings are on this planet around 40,000 years. Our economic system, what we're living in today, is maybe 300 years old. So we sometimes forget that the way how we have become human beings is 40,000 years old. The way how we run the economy is 300 years old. So over time, of course, we should not forget how we have become human beings. And modern management, effective action in what society we are in and for what purpose a community is. This does not matter whether it's a church, whether it's a club, whether it's a company, whether it's a governance, or whether it's a university. At the end of the day, we have to be effective, and it has to serve the purpose of the community. Let's define a little bit what a company is or an enterprise is. Sometimes people believe this is just capital, or that's not true, because a company always consists out of a customer. If you don't have somebody who wants to buy your product in a professional way, you don't have a company. The second, you have somebody who owns, who brings the capital. We have employees, we have suppliers, we somewhere in the local authorities, we in the region, we are in a country, and therefore the company is always more than just the capital. And that's part of the ecosystem we have to understand. The second thing is people who voluntarily collaborate in order to act successfully in a sustainable manner, using their skills, knowledge, resource, and needs. nobody must work at your company. It's not a must. You make a contract, you like to go with this company, and you try to collaborate with other people. And here is the art: as more attractive you are for outside people to work for your company, as more successful you are. But how do you make yourself attractive? And last but not least, we are not on our own. Everything lives in competition. Nature is competitive, and social systems are competitive, as well as companies competitive. Normally, we are not on our own. We always have somewhere competition. So the community realizes we are in competition, and therefore we have a common goal, and we move towards the common goal in a highly effective way. That's part of it. Let's have a view on how we have become humans the way we know them today. This is not a process which came overnight. It took quite some while. You can see here times in millions of years. Here 3 million years. So the first forefathers of us, 3 million years. But the human being is only the last 40,000 years. So what has happened in the evolution, we have a cultural and a medical evolution. And what you can see is, at the beginning, we made tools of stone, walls, then we defined the color, then we discovered the fire, then we had rituals around funerals, religion, then the art came into place, and at the very end, we understood how to apply medicine, and we understood how to make writing. This means the primal things of our behavior has been established not just in the last 40,000 years. A lot of our behaviors have been established much earlier in the way how we are, but we act in a subconscious way, not in a conscious way towards them. And you see the degree of humanization. You can see that our brain over the time has grown. We got teeth, which sharpens. We have our hands. And we have the upright walk. That's the major difference, that we can upright walk. Therefore, we have a different mobility. And this has to do is because we had the upright walk we went from the jungle out into the open landscape. So upright walking gave a competitive advantage for us. So when we are today in the human world, applying medicine, writing, religion, we live in cities, we have agriculture, we are domestication. We should not forget where we came from and why we came from that area. This has an impact on our behavior today. Okay. Here you see on the right side, you see the upright. This is the millions of years. So roughly 5 million years ago, our forefathers start to be in the upright walk, and then in the last 2 million years, the increase of the brain. And the reason why our brain increased is we realized that when we raise a family, this takes much more time. And with the fire, we can change the diet, so we have a much higher protein diet. A higher protein diet allows for a larger brain, but we needed the larger brain not for the intellectual part, we needed the brain for the social part, for the emotional part. So the last part of our brain in the forehead was developed at last, and that's the reason why we have done that. It's very interesting. The Homo neanderthalensis has a bigger brain than the Homo sapiens. Interesting enough. So we needed a larger brain because we need more energy, therefore we need different food. We start to eat more meat. Then we have a long phase of mother and child protection. It takes 9 months that the child is born, but it took at that time another 10 years before a human being is self-sufficient. Today it might take 30 years. Difference today, but when I look to my son, he's 27 years, so it takes longer time. Then in order to do that, mother and child, you need protection and care, because at the moment the mother takes care of the children, somebody else has to protect and somebody else has to organize the food. So we start to distribute the labor in our social system. Then we need to collaborate. Then in order to collaborate, you have to communicate in order to tell what you would like to have. And then we shared the food, and then they have the process of learning, the foundation of tradition and culture. And this goes together with the anatomical and the social evolution, which we can see in that area. So why is this so important? Because the brain of a human being consumes 80% of the glucose exchange the human being has. So it takes a lot of energy. 2% of the body weight is only in our brain, but 20% of our blood volume, 70% of the glucose turnover. It has to manage 100 billion cells in parallel. 95% of our brain is unconscious, and 25% of the human energy we consume goes to the brain. The brain is a very complex thing, and you can see here the red part here, the prefrontal cortex. That's the last part of the brain developed of a human being. All the other ones our forefathers also have in the same way, but we needed this prefrontal cortex for thinking, for the emotions, and also for the communications and for the cultural elements in order. Because we needed to judge emotionally if this is an enemy or not. We needed to speak to each other in that perspective. So that makes it very clear why we act in that way and why it is so important. Here you see the cells. This is a newborn. The newborn only has the emotions of the mother. But in the brain, after 1 month already, you have a network, because it sees, it hears, it smells the newborn. After 6 months, after 2 years. So our neurons in the brain start to get connected very fast. So that's the reason why we learn when we are younger much more than when we're older. Because in my age, the neural network is already established. Very difficult to add something new. Because it's for us very difficult to forget something. Subconsciously, it's always with us. And at any moment in time, 100,000 to 10 million neurons in parallel are fired up in your brain, and that takes energy. And that's, I mean, we are not very good in multitasking. We have to focus. If you want to be good, you have to focus on something, to focus on those neurons which are important for the subject you have to deal with at the moment. A very important point. I come back a little bit to the point that size is not a replacement for strategy. Sometimes in business, people think as bigger you are, as better it is. But when you look to nature, this is not true. You see here the body mass, the weight on the x-axis, and the speed of travel on the y-axis. And you can see here on the right side, the elephant, of course, has the highest body weight for the land mammals. It's the blue whale for the ocean mammals. And you can also see it's not very helpful to be too heavy. So the human being somewhere is here, between 50 and 100 kilograms normally. And therefore you can move around the world. You are very fast in movement. But you also can see that the reptiles and the anthropods, which are more here, they cannot travel as much. But the mass, the biomass on the planet is made by those, by the anthropods, not by the humans and not by the mammals. We have much more biomass from the other ones. So the anthropods occupy the world, not the human beings, to be honest. So no large stature and unlimited mobility. And that applies to the company in the same way. If a company is not agile to adapt to a changing environment, it cannot survive. That's the first thing you learn from nature. Be agile. And the second thing, if you're not willing to move in the case of a danger, of a threat, you can't survive. And that's the same learning you have in a company. A company has to remain agile in its structure, and it must be willing to move from one place to another place to do that. I'll give you an example. When you are in the newsprinting business in the year 2000, and you do not realize that digitalization comes, and you do not move then to have a digital newspaper, or you have a YouTube channel or whatever, you are out of business. So you have to remain agile, and to remain agile, size sometimes is not helpful if you are too big. We also have to understand that we have a cultural evaluation. You can see here 2 million years before Domino, first space tools. At the end, you see the encryption of the DNA in our cultural evolution. So the mankind continuously learns. What of the learning has an impact on the future is very relevant, you know, and what impacts you would like to take care of the future. So always believe there's a cultural evolution in a company, in a society, in an industry, in any system human beings are. There's always a cultural evolution, and you have to go with that evolution. Then coming to the difference, because when you look to the bees here and the human beings, we have a lot in common. We're taking care of each other. Human beings taking care of each other, and the bee hive also takes care of each other. But there are also fundamental differences. When you look, human beings taking care of several generations, but the bees do the same, the ants do the same. A crocodile does the same way, takes care of its kids. Not of its grandkids. The crocodile doesn't care about the grandkids. Human beings take care of their grandkids. We like to consider a family. In order to do that, you have to have an altruistically behavior, because you do not just care about yourself, you care about others. You try to make sure not on your own fitness, you take care of the fitness of the social system you're operating in. However, we humans also have a tendency to have nepotism, specifically in family businesses. You try to give it from father to the daughter, or father to the son, son to the daughter, son to the son. So there's a tendency to do that in political systems, in company systems, wherever we have this issue. And we have the idea of reciprocity. So if I do something for Henry, Henry does something for me. We have this tit for tat, we call that in our language. Humans are different. Everyone can reproduce themselves. In the animal world, this is not. In the animal world, it's very clearly who is allowed to reproduce themselves. Human beings, everybody can reproduce themselves. That creates competition for resources, for energy, for space, for land, for education. Alliances can also take place outside of the family. So Switzerland makes an alliance with Indonesia, completely different family, but we can do that. Universities make alliances with other universities, completely easy to do, no problems. And bonding behavior is based on cooperation. People know each other, and people, one way, can share possession and status. This is what nature has made us very specifically on human beings, and we can take care of that. And that brings you to a point is, okay, how does then a social system appoint its leader? And in the animal world, it's not always the strongest, it's the most fittest for the purpose. That's what Darwin already has established, the fittest, the survival of the fittest on one hand things, but in a social system, you have to use the most capable, not necessarily the most strongest one. And you can see here in a social system, between maximum power and powerless, and between human coldness and human warmth, ideally we select strong leaders which also have human warmth. The worst thing for us if the person is powerless and would be cold. But this normally does not exist as leaders. We do not accept those leaders. Sometimes we have very powerful leaders, but they are very cold, which we don't like on the long run, creates problems. Or we have powerful leaders which have warmth, and that works. And in fundamental, we choose those leaders based on the principle of protects the value of the group we are in. We improve the welfare for the group, so it's not just his own welfare, it's the welfare of the group. He defends the group from others, from competition, and he protects also the weak in the group. And we as human beings, we normally take care of our kids, which are the weakest, or the elderly, or people which are handicapped, or people which are sick. And the leaders have to make sure they're taking care of those things. This is how we select the leaders. In principle, this is how companies select their leaders. Do they take care of those 4 basic principles? Of course, we look for competence. Of course, we look for education. But the social element is the most crucial one. Humans in this social system, when we have selected a leader, is very clear. We humans want to survive. Oneself, of course, but also our genetic pool wants to survive. That means we humans are in a family or in a social system or in a society. We want to have our lives. But we also want to have a well-being. No fear and a degree of order. If the degree of order is not given, people automatically have fear. And the worst thing you can have in a company is fear. Because fear kills creativity, and fear kills the idea of looking for new things outside of the box. So number 1 rule is to try to avoid fear inside a company. Ideally, no fear in a society, then societies can strive. The reason for that comes out of the biology of our human being's brain. You can see here, this is a lady, Mrs. Rebecca Sakes from the MIT, and her son Percy. So it's a mother and her son, and the mother kisses the son. And you see the scan of the brain, which parts of the brain are active. And you can see here, this kiss starts the hormone oxytocin, which is the hormone, what we call the mother-child hormone. And this creates the bonding between 2 human beings. It's the we-there hormone. It binds people who are we, but can also make them more ethnocentric and less tolerant to them. This hormone creates that we like those very close to us, but we might be very distant to somebody else who has a different appearance, comes from a different religion, different background. It also separates us from them, normally. And in a company, you have to make sure that the reward system creates those dopamine, that the people feel good to work inside this company. And the leaders have to strive for such type of a system. And if you do this well, it creates this vasopressin, which binds the mother with the babies or romantic partners, but also people like to come together beyond the pure purpose they have. And it releases serotonin. That's the reason why in Switzerland we have so much chocolate. Chocolate also releases serotonin. It's you please your brain in the search for serotonin if you eat sweets or chocolate. And therefore it helps to regulate our mood. If people have a positive mood, the customer will find out that they are in a positive mood. And if they are in a negative mood, the customers will also not buy from you. That's the reason why you focus on that. Not to forget our the drives what we have. Human beings have 5 primary drives: safety, aggression, attachment, food, and sexuality is our basic drives. And those drives I explained to here on the way how we work together. When the drive strength is I feel lonely, the stimulus is I need a partner, the obedience is the partner search, the drive action would be I would like to hug somebody, and the pleasure sensation would be closeness. In the way of I'm looking for serotonin, where can I find chocolate, where can I buy chocolate, where can I eat chocolate, and does the effect come from? And you can see nature has made us the way, if we feel lonesome, and this degree is very high, but the familiarity of the person you would like to hug is very low, we don't hug this person. However, if the phenomenon is lonesome is very high, and I like this person because I'm very close, then I have the double partner, and then I start to hug a person. That's the philosophy of how we human beings act. When looking for a partner, hugging turn to friendship and closeness. So if we work in a company, if we want to be close together, we have to understand this. This is how we acted. And this is far beyond the 40,000 years we have established as human beings. This is what the people already did 3 million years ago. It's the basic fundamental how human beings function. When you have laws of bonding in a human and a social system, you have always the conflict and you have the recognition in a social system. Like at home, sometimes the parents like you, sometimes the parents don't like you. Sometimes the kids like the parents, sometimes the kids don't like the parents. In a social system, family is the smallest one we have. So as long as we are friendly, personal, and familiar with the behavior, in the same way we are treated fair, reliable, and truthful, then the social system works quite well. So imagine you have to do this in a company. It's very important that you have in the company this culture which allows to play in both ends, that the social system is working quite well. Besides that, leadership requires intuitive intelligence, and intuitive intelligence needs time, because you only have intuition when you have experience. So it takes time. You cannot go from 0 to 100% in leadership. It takes a lot of experiences before you get to that point. And it needs social skills, and intelligence often comes with age. That's the reason why at home we always have respect from grandma and grandfather, because they have social skills, they know, they have a certain wisdom. That's the reason why we like at home the elderly, normally. In Japan, when you go into a factory, when you go to a Toyota factory in Japan, you will find that the elderly people are not manufacturing the cars. They help the younger people how to manufacture the car better. So they give the wisdom to the younger generation how to do something better. And there's a major difference between cognitive learning versus social learning. You're going to school, you learn cognitively in the domain you want to become a bachelor or a master, but you also socially learn how to interact in a social system, what we call university, together. When you have leadership, people want to have a certain direction which gives safety to them. They want that you promote integration, that the social welfare, remember the hormones we create, and you mobilize the forces, the communication, the fairness. They like to be in that group. And if you have stress inside the company, in our brain we create cortisol, and that gives a blockade to the memory. When we have stress, we can't learn. So it's very important that in a company we try to bring down the stress level, that people can engage and learn. And if we have stress, under pressure, we say, we always go to behaviors which are very fundamental, which help us to survive. But this is not very creative then. That's not very learning. So you have to deal with stress in order to do that. We normally need a little bit of stress when we have to make tests, but we have less stress when we prepare for the test. That's why we train and learn before we do a testing, basically. So management and underestimates the needs of social system. Cooperation, belonging, cohesion, creativity requires physical proximity. You have to be together, also in the classroom. Allows learning much easier in the classroom. You need solidarity and identity. To what do I belong to this group? It needs a balance between freedom and the social pressure of a system. Always remember, out of sight, out of mind. If I don't see somebody, he suddenly disappears from my mind. If I see him regularly, he is always in my mind. Health is important for people, and the productivity of 80,000 individuals is not the same as 18,000 in a collective manner. So a company, as better they can collectively go for the common goal, is always more successful if we would have 18,000 individuals. And we is more important than the I. And you find this in sports, but you also find that in companies. The we is more important than myself. Last but not least, some of you might know this. This is the Pope from the Catholic Church. The highest leader of the Catholic passed away 2 weeks ago. And when I researched this a little bit, because I'm not religious in the Catholic, but my wife she's Catholic. And how did he change the social system he was running? Very interesting. Because in the Catholic Church you have very conservative parts, and that's in all religions the same. You have one of them very conservative, and on the other hand you have younger ones which are very liberal. They want to modernize the religion, you know. And the Pope stuck in between the younger ones, which want to modernize, and the old ones who have the power. And the Pope was elected in the middle of them. How can I change the social system I'm running as a pope? And he did it with two elements. The first thing, leadership by example. And the leadership by example, he comes from a very poor neighborhood in Argentina. He never forgot where he came from. The shoes he has on are the shoes he was wearing when he was in the poor neighborhood. He wear the shoes until his grave. His status is to show humbleness and poorness. He says, we are the church for the poor. And he symbolizes it by wearing those shoes. Normally the Pope has exclusive red shoes only made for him. He never wear those shoes. He always wear those black boots you see until into his grave. He took them into his grave. The second point he changed, and that's why I found it out, the Bishop of Jakarta was elected by this Pope here in Indonesia. And the way how to select the next bishops and cardinals goes to a consistory. These are amount of people who select, depending on certain criteria, who becomes the next bishop, who becomes the next cardinal. And Franciscus choose for this selection committee his own people. So those people he has chosen, he has elected 163 cardinals in his time as a pope, whereas 107 will elect, beginning of end of this week, the new pope. So he played the long game. He said, I take care of those who vote for the next pope are people who have my mindset. Therefore, I do not change the rules of the conservative. I do not follow the rules of the very liberal, but I change, through selection of the next generation of leaders, the way how the Catholic Church will develop on the long run. A very strategic long-term play in this subject. I'm coming to the end. My time is over. I would like to give with you that the virtual world, the digital world, we all like to be on social media, will not ensure the survival of us human beings. We still have to understand that we are human beings and have to come together, that we need warmth, culture, belonging, creativity, and activation of the meaning. It means we physically have to be close. The modern cave and the modern groups of people must also serve the fundamentals of evolutionary biology. Leadership you can see in the way we behave, in the architecture and the structure of the company, and this can make a big difference. And the warming fire of the early humans still need to be rekindled every day, that the people feel safe, secure, and have a future. And the bonding and good leadership must be practiced every day. I thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much for the inspiring talks from Mr. Matthias Altendorf. In this lecture, we already learned how the leadership can inspired by the evolutionary of biology and also the evolutionary of the human developments. And now it's time to for the question and answer. And first, I will invite 3 questions. You can talk in Bahasa Indonesia, no problem. Yeah, there's 1, 2, from there? Yeah, 3. Okay. First one, you can go to the microphone. This one first.
Test. Wait.
Okay. Yeah, this one first. Yes.
I'm piqued by your educational background that you choose to be having a background in as a physicist, and I like to know how your background contributes in building your career progress, and I also like to know how your background as a physicist helps you as developing your company.
Thank you very much for your question. First, answer the second question. We are a technology company and we're making measurement equipment. And to understand physics by nature helps to understand the technology what we are, you know. And in my early years, I was a research and development engineer, so that helps me. From a business perspective, physicists always think in systems, you know. And I studied nuclear and nuclear physics. And from Heisenberg, we know on an atom, we never can determine the speed and the mass at the same time. Either we know the speed or we know the mass, but not at the same time. So we always describe things in a systematic way, in a system. Not the individual, not the details, but the system. And a company is never just one detail. A company is a very complex social system. And that has helped me to understand how a social system works much better. Okay. Thank you for your question. Okay.
So I would like to ask this question. I find it interesting that Sir Matthias made a comparison between orangutans and human in bionic leadership. So if we applied their evolutionary strategies to family business longevity, how might this knowledge be implemented in like a multi-generational family farm like yours, KQ?
As I said, you know, you can see it in the company culture. One element, for example, is friendliness. Behind the friendliness, you can have attributes like we are humble, we respect each other, we treat each other like human beings, we try not to be fearful to them. And by those elements, we normally create the behavior of human beings on our social system that they are beneficial for the customer. If it's beneficial for the customer buys more products from us. If the customer buys more products, we are more successful and we can reinvest more into our future. So it starts with the behavior of the human beings, and that's how we implement it basically as one element.
Okay. And what is your name and from what faculty?
I'm William from the electrical engineering faculty. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Another more question? Okay. Please go to the microphone. Say your name and the faculty before the questions.
Hello, good morning, Mr. Matthias. I'm Awar. I come from geophysical engineering, and I will ask you a question. During the COVID-19 pandemics, many companies have faced major disruption in their operation and supply chains. Has your company experienced similar impacts, or if yes, how do you overcome them? And in addition of the pandemics, what other global threats do you think this company need to be aware of right now, whether from a technological, geopolitical, and environmental perspective?
Okay, thank you for your question. Coming back to the pandemic, of course, Hauser also was affected by the pandemic. But as soon as we saw what the scale of the pandemic is, that worldwide it will close down, first thing we learned from each other. We learned from our Chinese colleagues how they deal with the situation, and we try to implement them in the rest of the world. But we also try to help our Chinese colleagues by face masks, by cleaning agents, by disinfection material. So we ship things to China to help our employees at that moment. About 4 weeks into the pandemic, I announced to all employees that nobody will lose its job based on the pandemics. Coming back to my first sentence, I said, avoid fear in the company. So people, of course, were scared about will they lose their jobs. And we clearly said nobody will lose the job. Because I had so much money, or the company had so much money on our accounts, that I could have paid the salaries for 1 year without having one order. And therefore we give guarantee to all employees, you will not lose the job. We did not fire anybody, we kept all the people. After the pandemic, business came suddenly back and we had all people on board, so we captured a lot of market share in the 3 years after. Before the pandemic, we have been number 2, number 3 in the market. After the pandemic, we have been the world market leader. It was a strategic decision. The second point is, the second question of the part, does there other risk? Just remember, in 2009, the world financial crisis was a big risk to us, and we were also impacted by it, but at that time also we did not release any people, we did not fire anybody, we kept the people, continued our strategic path. Of course is now tariffs a big threat for the business around the world at the moment. Wars are a big threat, and global trade. If global trade is not allowed, it becomes much more complicated to have a global business which is successful. So these are the elements I would see as a risk for us as a company. I hope this answers your question. Thank you.
Okay. There is still time, so I would like to invite more questions.
Good morning, my name is Tifa. I'm from School of Business and Management. My research focuses on digital adoption in the family business. In the beginning of my research, I need to read a big number of articles to create a table of SOTA, stands for state of the art. And then what I read is there is no exact definition of family business. Even a scholar mentioned that they define family business based on their research purposes. Based on your experience in leading this company, how do you define family business? Thank you.
Okay. Based on my experience, a family business is that either the majority of the ownership of a company is in a family, or they can, through the amount of ownership, determine the future of the company. These are the two elements. Either they own the majority of the company, like in our case, the family owns everything, or like a company like Roche Pharmaceutical, they do not have all the shares, but they have the majority of the voting power. Okay? Still, the shares, 50% is with other people, but the majority of the votes are with the family. So clearly that the family determines the future of the business based on the decision-making power. That's for me the family definition. Second point, normally you would say also it goes from one generation to the next, but sometimes an entrepreneur, a founding company, owns only one generation. Okay.
Other questions?
If you have no more questions, then I will try to release the answers to my questions I had at the beginning.
All right, so. Yeah, come on.
Okay. So why does the male gorilla have 14 times the power of a human being? Who has the answer for that?
So who has the answer for these questions?
Okay. You couldn't find it on Google? Look at the habitat.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Hello.
Yes.
Okay, so I think why a male gorilla have 14 times the strength of a human, because they live in the forest or jungle, and they would need to navigate on the treetops, and due to their massive size also they need more strength to like carry themselves and travel around, I think.
Yep, that's a good answer. They live in the mountain jungle, which is first has a slope. Second, there's no road, there's no street. So they have to make the path for the whole group to move inside the jungle. And depending on the season, they have to harvest the fruit from certain trees. So they cannot cut the tree, but they can throw the tree with the pure force over it. So the pure force helps them to navigate inside the jungle and to find over the year the right diet for the whole thing, because they have to make sure, depending on the year, that they have the right amount of fruits from the right type in order to have a sufficient diet. Congratulations, very good answer for that.
Congratulations. So, what's your name?
That's for her. So here is a gift for you.
First.
Thank you very much. The answer, okay? Okay.
I'm Meryl from Aerospace Engineering.
Okay. Okay. Second question. Why does the mountain gorilla still have the carnivore teeth, even so it is vegetarian? Come on.
Come on.
Hello, sir. My name is Irham. I'm from mechanical engineering. So my answer is, sorry if I'm wrong, but I would assume that because he lives in a jungle where the jungle is filled with other animals, including carnivores and other threats, so he needs to display himself as a powerful animal that can fend themselves and, you know, protect themselves and show the other carnivores that we're not that easy to dominate, to be dominated. Yeah.
Okay. Half of the answer, correct? Thank you.
Okay. So
the reason really is nobody knows exactly. But it has to do with where we came from. Because we have the carnivore, all the other ones have the carnivore teeth. The orangutan also is a vegetarian. So our prehistory, so the missing link we call in nature before us, obviously was a meat eater. And over time, depending on which habitat we are, we optimized our diets. Still today, human being can be very vegetarian, but he has to be very careful that he doesn't get sick. Huh? The same is for the mountain gorillas. They have to make sure that they get the right amount of vitamins. So they have the carnivore teeth from their past history to eat meat, but they don't eat meat today. But that's the explanation. It's biologically a past, like with us, it's from the past. But thank you for your answer. Okay. Last but not least, why is the female the most powerful person and not the male?
It's because the male focuses more on like short-term dominance, while the female focuses on like long-term nurturing of the knowledge for the generation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's almost right. If the male, they fight for herd leadership. They fight for who leadings the pot, who leadings the herd. By doing that, they can get killed. If they would get killed, the whole family would die because they would not know at what part of the season they have to be where in their field where they operate in. The female don't fight. So if it's stored in the oldest lady, the knowledge goes from one generation to the next. So that was the storage system, is with the elderly. And therefore, even if the male passes away, the oldest lady knows where to go to find the right food during the season and during the year. And when we look to our own families, we always go to grandma too, because grandma normally doesn't fight. You know, it's a very human being. So, but that's the fundamental, the storage of knowledge collectively gathered over generations remains with the oldest female, and the people respect the oldest female in order for survival. That's the answer. So, it was almost correct. Thank you very much. It was good. Thank you.
There is still one question from the Zoom.
Okay, one more. Okay, why do most family businesses in Asia struggle to survive beyond the third generation? This is not just a struggle in Asia, it's a struggle around the world. There are many answers to it. I give you the answer from a Swiss perspective. One reason why we have in Switzerland, Germany and Austria family businesses which are fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth generation is simple. We do not have inheritance tax. So if the wealth goes from one generation to the next generation, the ownership, we do not have to pay tax on that. In France, in the United States, for example, you have to pay tax on that. So if you give in France the wealth you work through to the next generation has to pay 30% tax on it. In order you don't want to do that, you bring it to the stock market, you have your stocks, and you can give the stocks from one generation to the next. So that's one reason. But there's also a biological explanation about it. The first generation normally is the founder. Everything is decided at one person. The second generation sees the tough time of the founder, and they want, of course, to have a different life for their kids than what they have experienced in their foundation period. Therefore, they try to treat their kids and the education in a different way. And the third generation normally grows up with a lot of wealth, and they don't have to fight so much for everything. And that's the reason why after the third generation, a lot of family businesses go away if they are not well educated and if they don't want to compete. How to overcome that is you put a governance structure inside the company, and at a certain period of time you let outsiders run the company, managed by outsiders, like myself for example, but you still maintain the ownership and you focus on selecting the right people. And all what I do is I select the right people. That's where my primary focus in is. I try to find the right people for my company. That's all what I'm focusing on. So that's the answer to the question. Thank you very much for the question.
Once again, we give big applause to Mr. Matthias Altendorf, who already gave a very inspiring talk. Thank you. And the time I would like to return to MC.
Thank you very much.
We kindly ask Mr. Altendorf to remain on stage. Now, we would like to invite Dr. Andrianto Rikri Kusmara, Vice Rector for Communication, Partnerships, Alumni Relation, and Administration of Institut Teknologi Bandung to present a token of appreciation to Mr. Matthias Altendorf. Next, Mr. Altendorf will present a token of appreciation to Dr. Andrianto Rikri Kusmara. We would like to invite the lecturers from ITB and the delegates from Endress and Hauser group to kindly come forward to a group photo. Ladies and gentlemen, the Studium Generale has come to an end. Thank you for your attention and participation. Have a great day.